up your podcast radio. This is the Dr. Rushmore Show. Here I am with my good friends Richard.
Hello.
And Michael.
Howdy.
And we're coming to you live from inside Teddy Roosevelt's mustache here at a national monument in Rapid City, South Dakota. Mount Rushmore Show is the show where we debate the most ubiquitous aspects of any given topic. And this week, that topic is the Mount Rushmore of musical side projects, which was chosen by Miguel. Why?
There's one band that I listen to every once in a while that I heard while driving home from work. And it's like, oh, I would like to talk about this band. And then I thought, oh, I wonder what else is out there that is significant creative work that's a side project, that someone has left whatever they're doing to pursue, to explore a certain side of their music that they can't do within the confines of their band, and then also return to their band.
Yeah.
It feels, John Lennon Lost Weekend going out and spending some time with another family for a bunch of years and then coming back and being like, hey, I'm back to being John Lennon or whatever. John Lennon is not on my list, but it's one of those weird things where a musician operates within a band which acts as a family, and then is like, I love you guys. I got to write these songs, and they're not fill-in-the-blank songs. These aren't Radiohead songs. These are Tom York songs.
Yeah.
Although my caveat for this episode, and for like my rules that I put on this episode and this topic, was no solo projects. This has to be kind of something that wants to be pursued with someone else.
Yeah.
It feels like. Or there's some aspect to it where it's not quite cheating, but it's not quite like...
Yeah.
Like, this isn't Radiohead, but it's not Tom York. It's whatever Tom York wants to do with someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I find that just really fascinating, especially when... I guess we'll get into it when I'll talk about it on some of my other choices. When it's like, bands are on tour and they meet other bands, and they're like, I like this other band.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like their music too.
I don't know if you have Delaney and Bonnie on yours at all, but the thing that was Derek and the Dominoes was on tour, and I think Delaney and Bonnie was the opening act, and Eric Clapton he just wanted to play with the opening act. So, but what I think is the band is a structure through which we observe a lot of entertainment in the form of music, and if you think of certain collectives of musicians, or does a contemporary artist even think in terms of, I'm going to join this band and be in this band the rest of my life?
I don't know. I think a lot of bands start out that way. I'm astounded, too, by like a band like U2, who's been around for almost 40 years. I cannot think of a single thing that the other four members have done that hasn't been U2. Yeah. Which is outstanding. Which is like crazy on its own. That to me is a little, has Bono, the closest
the
thing
Edge
Bono
had a custard stand, I think, in Dublin.
The closest. Would you like some custard?
Edge?
Would you like some custard?
Is this Rebel custard?
It's a Rebel, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's lemon, it's raspberry, it's cream, it's real custard. But I don't know. I think that, yes, bands act like a family, or as like brothers and sisters, and then sometimes it's broken for a little bit, and then they come back together. Or I
wonder if you ask the guys in a Weezer, is this a band or is this Rivers Cuomo's thing that he does, and then he calls you guys? You're really just kind of day laborers for him when you go out on the road.
I don't know. I also think it's not part of this topic. It's interesting when like the guys that used to be in the band and then the band makes it big. Like, what's the guy from the Rentals? Oh, who left? Like it was like the drummer from
Matt Sharp.
Yeah, it was like the drummer or like the guitarist from Weezer. He was like with Weezer, then left and started, the Rentals, and they put out one song, Friends of P, and had one success. Yeah. And it's like, well, Weezer's still around somehow after 25 years. What the Rentals doing? Him.
Okay, cool. So Michael chose it. Richard starts.
All right, so my first choice are the Traveling Wilburys.
Also on my list, too.
Were they the band you were thinking of specifically?
No. That was just one of those that was like, as I started getting into it,
Yeah.
and thinking and researching. It was like, oh, this is one of those weird super groups, mega groups
Right.
that it was actually pretty fascinating.
Do you like white people? How do you feel about white people? Older white people.
This is all of them.
That's a trick
they're
question,
all
Michael. Don't
in
answer
here.
that.
Yeah. Don't fall for it.
So that's number 2 in the Borglum bag. So I don't know I forget what wild, crazy Australian rules football we have here.
I think that means we're done with the episode.
Okay.
No, but because it was number 1 on our collective list, they still only count for 1 point.
Okay,
But it
okay.
gets doubled because it's in your bag.
Okay. All right. So what do you like about the Wilburys?
I love this album.
Yeah.
The first album. Nobody remembers the
second.
album. I'm
I do-
sure I know it exists, but it didn't have Roy Orbison, so get out of here.
Yeah.
I do like that they named the second album Volume 3 as just kind of an FU to people being like, what?
Wait, what?
I think that's very clever.
So anyway, this was essentially a project that was spearheaded by George Harrison, who basically decided that after he did Cloud 9 and had this kind of career revival, what he wanted to do was get a kind of supergroup together.
Yeah.
People he was friends with. Or
Being
was
another
fans
group of guys who are better than him.
Yeah, basically. Well, no, that's the thing. That's the thing. He decided to make sure that he picked people who were more down to his level. Except for Dylan, but Dylan was still going through that weird "I think I'm a Jew" thing back
Tom
then.
Petty. I could write better than Tom Petty, sure.
Exactly. So they actually started off recording a song as a B-side to one of his singles, and that song was Handle with Care. And they realized, no, wait, this song is like way too good to be just a B-side of a single. So they decided to make a whole album based around that song.
Being beat up and battered around, being sent up and I've been shut down. You're the best thing that I've ever found. Handle me with care. Reputations changeable, situations tolerable. But baby,
Was Jeff Lynne kind of the glue of the group?
I think he was the one who knew everybody.
Yeah.
I think because he had just got done producing Cloud 9, and he was producing Full Moon Fever for Tom Petty at the time, and I think he'd done
Is he the
Orbison album.
Is he the our friend Anderson of the group?
He knows a guy.
Where he knows a guy.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Lynne knows a guy.
Yeah, I can get you an emu.
Yeah, he knows a guy.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. So from a song standpoint, the consistently great song. I feel like that showcases all the artists,
Their individual
in it.
talents.
Yeah. And
They're all very. I like that they all contribute different vocals too.
Yeah.
Like they all bring something different. Like Roy Orbison is like they're so all iconic in how they sound.
Yeah.
Which I think is very interesting. Sometimes there's bands that do these super groups and one guy is the lead singer, and in spite of him being the lead singer of his other group or whatever, he's still the lead singer. I don't know if Jack White. I wish that Jack Black was on my list. I don't know if Jack White is on any of your choices.
Maybe.
He may be. But he is a guy that is like, if I see the Raconteurs or the
Dead Letter.
Yeah.
Dead Weather or it's or Them Crooked Vultures, I think he's in that. I don't know. Maybe. It feels like, oh, that's just a Jack White production.
Oh, it
Right.
kind of dominates.
It's very, but this doesn't feel like that. This feels like, that's a Roy Orbison song. That one is a Tom Petty. That one is
That's kind of all of them
Yeah.
together. Interesting factoid. One of the things they bonded over was everyone in the band had a shared love of Monty Python.
wow.
And apparently Roy Orbison could recite whole skits, like verbatim.
Is that right?
Nerds. It's a nerd. It's a group of nerds.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? You
You
know?
know, Eric Harrison is essentially an honorary Python.
Right. He produced like Life of Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was saying somehow Eric Idle had gotten word from Priscilla Presley or something, or one of Elvis's, maybe even post Priscilla, a girlfriend of Elvis's, who said that Elvis would just stay up all night and laugh at the Knights Who Say Knee. He thought he could quote whole sections of Python.
Hey, man, you see that night?
Look at that.
There's a plumber. That's Roger the Shrubber. Roger the Shrubber.
I do appreciate that they kind of had like a little bit of a kayfabe of their band. The band
fake,
was like a fake family with the last name Wilbur,
Yeah.
and it changed. The players' names changed from one album to the next, as if there was the other part of the family
Yeah.
that was going to put out this next album.
And I imagine too,
I think
like,
that's pretty cute.
One thing that they didn't need was any kind of more recognition. Here's all these guys who've gone beyond transcendent celebrity. What I guess from a vocal standpoint, I remember hearing at that time. I don't think I could discern. This was college for me. Dylan and Petty, because they had such a similar kind of
They were
reedy
basically
kind of voice.
the same voice, and then
Yeah.
you had them harmonize. And I'm going to use air quotes here.
Yeah.
Harmonizing.
Yeah.
And it was a interesting mix, let's put it that way.
Cool. So fun first pick for Michael and Richard. So now Michael would give us his second choice.
My second choice is The Monsters of Folk, which is Jim James from My Morning Jacket, Connor Oberst from Bright Eyes, and Mike Mogus from Bright Eyes, and Will Johnson from a band called Centromatic. I've never heard of them. And also M. Ward from She and Him.
Ryan Adams not involved with this, is
No.
he? Good.
Monsters of Folk were a band
Fuck that guy.
where at some point all these different bands were on tour in like the early 2000s, and they met each other and started jamming.
Oh.
And they started writing music, but because they were so involved in their other bands that took precedence, they didn't really do anything other than write music together and play music until they put out an album in 2009. So 5 years of just kind of like, I'm interested in whatever this idea is of putting out kind of folksy songs, but they're kind of rock and roll songs too. They're kind of all over the place. They have all these different influences from very eclectic band members. I mean, My Morning Jacket and Jim James, he's got such a big bombastic voice. And Connor Oberst is just this prolific wonder kid that, you know, kind of redefined what indie rock was for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, he had 5 or 6 years of like, oh, how does he have another album out? And still had time to put out what is a really great single album.
Yeah.
And I just love the idea of people getting together and sticking with an idea in spite of it just being kind of like, almost like, is this, we're just having fun playing while we're on tour. I guess we should do something with this album and put this out. And all of them went back to, like they did one album, then went back to being like Jim James from My Morning Jacket, and Connor Oberst went back to just doing more Bright Eyes albums. And like, I love that.
Do you feel like from a economy standpoint, would having a side project be something that would enable a person who, when they're in their home band, they are the singer-songwriter, they're the main driver of it, they're the intellectual generator of all the content. But when you are
Teaming up with other heavies.
Now you're
You can
the Avengers.
step into the background.
Yeah.
And the Hulk comes out and smashes someone.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Captain America doesn't. You
Yeah.
can go get his.
You don't have to carry
Connor
him.
Oberst, the Hulk in this situation.
Connor Oberst. Okay, if Connor Oberst is the
See the Natasha Romanoff. Yeah.
who's the most prolific but weird one? Hawkeye. Hawkeye.
Oh, Hawkeye?
He's Hawkeye.
He's not Thor?
No.
Thor's pretty weird.
Yeah, Thor's a weirdo. Nah,
Hawkeye.
we got to take this off mic and then
Okay.
really figure this out. But this album in itself is just wonderful. The lead song, Dear God, is just
I love that song. Dear God, hope you got the message in.
it's called Dear God Sincerely MOF. And it's just this and all of them kind of contribute to it and sing vocals at some point throughout it. Someone starts it off and then it leads into the next verse and the next verse and someone else takes over. It's
But God, I know you have your reasons. Dear God,
kind of like playing around, and the album is just great. And you know, it's cool that rock stars can be cool with each other and put out different music than what they're used to.
Do you think that on the road, the rest of their band is like, oh, good. they're out there kind of writing new songs with another band. That's fabulous. Great.
I don't know. It's like that cheating aspect,
Yeah.
or it's like, this really isn't what I'm into. I'm glad he can go get his rocks off over,
Yeah.
over with the guy with the beard.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, Richard, what do you got for your
My second choice are the new pornography.
Phone books been ripped off, and two shakes in the dark across the way. Know the price of flight. It's weight and size. If you've got something that sheds some light, use it tonight.
Oh, cool.
And this is an example of a band whose side project quickly became much bigger than any of their main projects.
Yeah.
Started in 1997 in Vancouver by Carl A.C. Newman, and plus a lot of other people who were involved in the Vancouver Canadian indie folk and rock scene. And yeah, they are now much bigger than any of their original works.
I think Neko Case is at a pretty
Nico Case
successful.
is pretty close.
Yeah.
Which is why she sometimes kind of pops in and out of the band, and there's some albums where she's not super available or she's not able to tour with them, which is why it still feels like this sort of side project thing, right? Because they don't all... I know Dan Behar from Destroyer was not involved with the last album because he was in the middle of making a Destroyer album, and they just couldn't match it up to be able to make it work for him to be part of the last New Pornographers album. It still has that feeling of like a side project, kind of like, hey, here's a thing that we're doing while we're not doing our main music.
Yeah.
Even though way more people know New Pornographers than any of Carl Newman's solo stuff.
That's interesting. A band I almost put on here was one of my favorites, of Death Cab for Cutie.
Right.
And that one started out as like a side project of Ben Gibbert's from... he had a group called like Part-Time Quarterback or Full-Time Quarterback, and then he did this. He met up with some of the other guys. He met up with Chris Walla, and of course I can't remember the name of the bassist because who cares? But it's one of those things that started as like a little side project, and that side project took over and became his main project, which is interesting. Like,
right.
I love that idea too, of like this thing became almost bigger than.
Yeah, it's a rare
them.
example. It's not. Obviously, you mentioned Death Cab for Cutie. There's a few other examples of side projects that have become as big or bigger than the original project itself, and that's kind of where I thought New Pornographers kind of came in and needed a place at the table.
Cool. All right. So, gents, this is a good time, as good a time as any, to take a break and welcome the listeners to go out and find more of us. Find more us. We don't have side projects. This is all we do. We're dedicated to each other. We're never going to break up. We're always going to be...
Hey, guys,
Well, you were on a
Wait,
podcast
what?
recently.
Why were you late?
we need to talk.
Why were you late before the taping, Richard?
We need to talk.
You smell like a different podcast.
smell like a different podcast.
Were you on the Grand Canyon podcast?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Are you on another national monument park?
I need air. I need air. I need water.
Listen,
I need
guys,
air.
I was just dabbling. Okay.
Oh, my God. How many downloads do you need? You men need...
Oh, God, more than whatever we're
we
getting.
got, yeah.
Literally.
Is it bigger than 5?
Go, fine, go. No, you listeners, stay and go out and listen to our past episodes. They can be found on iTunes, obviously, then Stitcher, and then also iHeartRadio. And I think we're now on ZipZap. Guys, note to self, start ZipZap. Sounds like it. You could also join us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and suggest new topics that we could deliberate. And you could also recommend examples of things that we should have said in previous topics. You could also support other podcasts, like this other one that Richard's going to start up or starting up, or this one.
This is Alexa from the You Can Rewind It podcast. Remember those movies you loved as a kid? What would happen if you rewatched those favorites from your childhood? Would you still like them? My husband Brock and I are on a mission to watch these 80s classics to see if they still hold up today and if we'd give them a rewind. Check out our podcast, You Can Rewind It, on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app. And remember, just because you can rewind it doesn't mean you should.
You can rewind it. You can rewind it.
Richard, was that your podcast?
No.
Oh, you're lying. I can tell
Yes.
you're lying. So this has been the Mount Rushmore of side projects that are not solo projects. And I think it is Michael.
So my next band is one that, this is the one that I was thinking of when I thought of this topic. It's a band called The Glove.
Oh.
And it was a Robert Smith, Steven Severin from Susie and the Banshees.
Oh, wow.
Side project that they did that started out of, so Robert Smith from The Cure was kind of burnt out after they put out an album called Pornography. And he went on tour with Susie and the Banshees, playing as their lead guitarist when like someone else left the band. So he went touring and was just a full-fledged member of the band.
Wow.
At the same time, The Cure was opening for Susie. So he'd play the opener.
Oh, geez.
And then he'd go and play with Susie as well.
Wow.
So he'd be playing double sets every night.
That's how he's kept his youthful physique all these years.
But he was like doing, you know, it was 1982 or 83. They were just doing a ton of drugs.
Yeah.
And he struck up like this kind of friendship and like kind of working relationship with Steven Severin. And they went off and put out an album called Blue Sunshine. And it is this, it's very kind of trippy. It's a little, it feels very hallucinogenic at times. It's very strange. It feels like very much like Element. It feels like if The Cure and Susie put out an album together. One of the weird caveats about this album is that he doesn't do like any singing on it. He sings on like one or two songs, but they hired, or there's a female singer named Jeanette Landry who has done basically nothing else, who came in and sung all of these songs. So it's very weird to hear like Cure songs with a female voice.
Yeah.
And it's very kind of psychedelic and weird and of the era. And I just love this album. It's this little like blip on the radar in things that like Robert, like, you know, I'm an unabashed Cure fan of like a little blip on the radar of things that Robert Smith did. Mm-hmm. And there are times that like there are just these weird jangly guitars that feel very much like they lead into like a later album. And like you can hear little bits and pieces that sound so familiar, but it's so different.
Wow.
But I just love this album. And, you know, both guys went back to their, after this came out, Robert went back to The Cure and Severin went back to Susie and the Banshees. And
I do wonder what the element of recording albums to fulfill a contract with a label has to do with it too.
Well, part of it too was he couldn't sing all the vocals on it because he was under contract.
Ah, okay.
So that's why they brought in this other woman to sing. I assume that Steven Severin doesn't have a singing voice, or maybe he would have sung it. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But that was one of the interesting things, was he was basically writing this music that he had probably intended to sing, then realized, I'm not allowed to. I can play on this and I can sing bits and pieces, but I can't sing all of it.
It also sounds like Joe Walsh with the Eagles, or with Eagles. Like he had been a full-fledged rock star and then was recruited into this, what was kind of a super group. Weren't the Eagles a super group?
They were kind of like of the West Coast, sort of like people that were floating around, sort of.
Like Fleetwood Mac was. It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But then if you are, let's say you are an artist with a group, let's say you're with a group and you're a prolific songwriter. Like I think of James Mercer I don't know if he's going to pop up, but like if maybe he doesn't want to do, maybe he's only legally obliged to do a December's album every
Shins.
two. What's that?
James Mercer's from the Shins.
So the Shins, sorry, the Shins, yeah. So a Shins album every couple of years. So I was getting calling. So he's going to do Broken Bells,
Right.
or he's going to do something on the side, because if he makes any music in that milieu, he's just going to overflow. He's writing something for the band, and he doesn't have to do that. So.
And I may be wrong about the Shins too, but I think that's one of those bands where it's him plus people.
Yeah, he kicks the others to the curb.
Other people
yeah.
come in and out.
Yeah,
But basically, when he wants to put out an album under the Shins,
Yeah.
it is him plus people, not necessarily. It's just like I've designated these songs as Shins songs.
Yeah.
And then when he's with what's his name from I can't remember the other guy in Broken Bells.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is what this is.
Yeah. Yeah. And unless you play piccolo trumpet, I don't need you. The Shins needs a piccolo trumpet. Yeah. Okay, Richard.
All right, my third choice are the Power Stations.
Oh, cool.
When the heat is on, some feel the heat and decide that they can't go on.
With Robert Palmer, not the music critic, but the actual musician. Former Chic drummer Tony Thompson, and then Andy and John Taylor from Duran Duran. They actually started kind of as a whim. Babe Buell wanted to record a version of Get It On.
Oh, is that right?
And so this was kind of the group that got together to sort of make it. And after that kind of didn't work out so well, they decided, well, it'd be fun if we kind of kept this going. And sort of got Robert Palmer in there to record one song. And he's like, oh, do you have any other stuff that's laying around? Maybe I could do some other vocals. And then the album just kind of came together.
Oh, cool.
And it was when Duran Duran was on a break from being Duran Duran. Part of the band went off, like the Simon Le Bon group went off to go become Arcadia. And then that was kind of a sort of very similar, I think, to Duran Duran, that kind of smooth sort of 80s sort of synth feel to it.
Yeah.
And then this part of the band, the two Taylors, went off and did Power Station, which was this real hard rock kind of oriented.
Yeah.
And they did 3 albums total. They only did 1 album with Robert Palmer, because after the first Power Station album came out, it was a big hit. He basically decided, wait, you know what I should do? A solo album, which wound up becoming Riptide, I think, which was the one that had
Addicted to Love,
and wound up becoming this like massive, huge hit. And a lot of people sort of said that he ripped off that sound from the Power Station album for his solo stuff after that, because it definitely doesn't sound like some of the solo stuff he had been doing before. Of course, he sort of denied that and sort of said he's the one who brought the sound to the band. Who knows? But it is very much an album that is a snapshot of like whatever year was that first album was made, 1985.
It's funny because I feel like it should sound like Chic.
Yeah.
Like I know John Taylor was a very much a Nile Rodgers protege on Bernard Edwards.
And Bernard Edwards produced it.
Yeah. So that's funny with the drummer too. But sorry, you said that Robert Palmer claims to have sparked the idea for their sound.
Right, exactly. And that's sort of up in the air. But the point is, was very much I think when you look for an 80s kind of big drum rock sound, that's certainly one of those albums that sort of solidified what that sound would be like.
Yeah.
You know, between that and some of those Steve Lillywhite produced albums, like the Phil Collins, some of the Police albums that the gated big drum sound.
Yeah.
This also has that same kind of feel to it.
Plus swords clashing.
Swords clashing and lots of neon.
Yeah.
A lot of neon.
Cool. That was a cool poll. Michael, your last choice.
My last choice. The Gorillas.
Oh, okay. That was in the first place on the in the Borglum bag. So it
Damon albums, kind of not post Blur, but like in between Blur breakups sort of album that he put out with Jamie Hewlett. And Richard, you were just down in Australia, so I'm sure you ran into Jamie.
Oh,
Sure
I
you
saw
said-
him. Yeah,
He's good?
James and I.
Oh, okay.
I call him James.
Yeah, of course.
A little more formal relationship.
Jamie Hewlett is most famous for
Being one half of Hewlett Packard.
the other half formed the Green Bay Packers,
yeah.
the football team.
Huey Hewlett and the News.
Yes, it's all related.
Sports album was
Yeah.
played in Green Bay.
Very good. Jamie Hewlett, famous for cartoonist or comic book artist behind Tank Girl.
Oh,
and
wow.
so Gorillaz became this kind of conceptual project of, it's an imaginary band, basically. It's Damon Albarn playing everything, bringing in some other people to, do kind of side vocals and add different.
Yeah.
But they're like 4 cartoon characters as a band. And
Yeah.
they put out like 3 or 4 really good albums that
Oh, yeah.
sound so different from Blur.
But not for long, the future is coming on. I ain't happy, I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, but not for long, the future is coming on. It's coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on.
Finally, someone let me out of my cage. Now, time for me is nothing cause I'm counting no A's. Nah, I couldn't be there. Nah, you shouldn't be scared.
And I guess what was interesting is he waited to put this album out until after the other members of the band also were kind of moving on to other projects. So I don't know if he was just like being really respectful of his other bandmates or kind of waiting until everyone decided, okay, we all want to pursue something else right now. And then it was like, okay, well, I got this cartoon
Wow.
band
Yeah.
idea that's kind of like hip hop and,
Which is crazy. It's like the Archies.
Brit rock.
Yeah. Is it Dan the Automator? I think he's like one of the other, because it's
Yeah,
some
he
of the
is.
producers and things like that.
But it's a fun little
Oh, yeah.
virtual band, and if you see them live, they perform behind a big screen of animation.
Yeah.
They kind of keep up the guise of being this cartoon band, and all the characters are very iconic and very street art and very,
Yeah.
they feel of Jamie Hewlett. So it's like just very cool.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, Blur came and went and came back together, and they put out albums since then. And it's, I don't know, just these little things. When you have an idea, it's like, this isn't something, he has this music in him, and it's not something he can do with Blur. This is not
Yeah.
Britpop. This is
Yeah.
not, it's not Blur music. It's something very different, but
And another band where the spin-off became more successful than the original band, at least in the U.S.
yeah, definitely. Because, Blur here, what was the Yahoo song? Song 1.
Song 2.
Song 2, thank you. Song 1, not as popular.
No,
obviously.
that was the demo.
But it's so funny that like Song 2 became their biggest song, which is fun, but it's not like
When they specifically wrote it trying to write a really dumb like American rock hit, and they won. They succeeded.
very well achieved.
Well
Blur.
played, sirs.
Cool choice. Richard, your last one, please.
All right, so Michael, you mentioned Jack White earlier, and I could have chosen from any number of his side projects.
Yeah.
I went with the Rockin' Tours.
Okay. Yeah, the good one.
Yeah, the one that people like.
Find yourself a girl and settle down. Live a simple life in a quiet town. Steady as she goes. Steady as she goes. So steady as she goes.
And I actually was more excited about them because I'm a huge Brendan Benson fan. So Brendan Benson being the other singer-songwriter. You might know him from such things as being the other guy in the Rockin' Tours.
Oh, okay.
But also has a great solo career. If you guys have not checked out Brendan Benson and some of his solo stuff, I would highly encourage it. Great stuff. And I knew that he's from Detroit, and that's sort of him and Jack White kind of got to know each other and formed sort of a mutual admiration society. I know Jack White with the White Stripes would do covers of Brendan Benson songs on live shows and radio gigs and stuff like that. And so this is an example of what happens when a side project kind of sweeps in these people who are, let's say, at a lower level of fame or popularity. I'm happy for Brendan Benson.
Yeah.
Like that guy has been a working musician, dropped by labels, picked up by labels, gone through like every iteration of being the next big thing to being, like I said, dropped from his label and having to do indie labels and all this stuff. And he's got to have made so much money off of the Raconteurs, primarily because people bought the album because of Jack White. And I know that kind of sucks and it sounds kind of harsh, but I'm sure he made a ton of money off of it. So God bless him.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is a big difference between Raconteurs and Dead Weather and White Stripes songs? I can honestly say that I don't pay that much attention, mostly because maybe it's just built into me that I think, oh, this just feels like another Jack White thing.
His vocal is very dominant. When I hear Jack White sing, I don't feel like he's doing himself.
I think that.
And this totally comes out of ignorance. Like, I can think of the one Raconteur song, Steady As She Goes.
Right.
And that's about it. And I could feel like, I could kind of see that as a...
Mm-hmm.
Again, I kind of, since I'm coming out as a Brendan Benson fan, I'm thinking of some of his songs, which is definitely way more melodic than anything that the White Stripes would do. And I think overall, the Raconteurs, at least, that stuff tends to be a little bit more kind of melodic and pop-oriented. Then I don't want to say
blues.
It's pop, but it's at least got that sort of like power pop kind of
Yeah,
feel
I
to it.
guess the White Stripes tend to be a little edgier or harder and maybe more staccato and how
crunchier.
Good word.
Okay, cool choices. We had some choices that were in the bag, and therefore in the bag from a scoring standpoint. Driving the Wilburys, you each got 2 points for that. I learned a little bit about the Monsters of Folk, so you get a point for that, Michael. And I didn't know about the history of the power station and that stuff. But the Gorillas was also in the bag, so that gets a point. 2 points. This has been the Mount Rushmore of side... Oh, guys, sorry. I just got a text. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Hey, guys, I got to go.
Let me ditch these losers. I'll be at the studio in 5.
I got to go. I got another thing.
You got to go?
I got a thing that I got to go do.
What exactly? What is it going? Was that a contract in your hand?
It's a thing.
Oh, my God.
It's just a thing.
I am, as always, I'm Jeff.
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.